everyone, my name is Matthew Griffin, better known as the Fanatical Futurist, and I'm going to be, again, your host for this trip into the future of technology and science, the latest innovations and breakthroughs that I've spotted over the past 12 days. So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a futurist. I look up to really 50 to 100 years out. So yes, I actually do that. I track over 600 emerging technologies, hundreds of different megatrends across every single sector, line of business, every kind of steep trend, to basically try to understand what the future could look like, and then how we as individuals navigate that future so that we don't get crushed by it. Now, I'm a 15 times author, so if you don't think that I necessarily track emerging technologies up to 100 years out, then, well, you can play along with me, as they say. So I write these codexes. So this is the Emerging Technology Codex. The latest one is about 450 pages long. It includes over 350 of the latest emerging technologies. So for example, if we just turn to a random page, you can see digital metamaterials. I mean, there's lots. There's liquid artificial intelligences in there, meta artificial intelligence in there, which is not Facebook. That's a completely weird in-game kind of artificial intelligence that no one else has actually spotted yet. Sort of the generative artificial intelligence of the future. We've got 4D printing, molecular assemblers. Basically, we go way beyond virtual reality to look at neural streaming and all those kinds of goodies, as well as memory editing, memory downloading, memory uploading. So that's all in there. So if you want to play along with these videos that I create, go to 311institute.com and download all of this stuff for free. Next, basically, if you want to really start digging into a lot of the trends that we see out there, so I say that did I say that I track hundreds of mega trends? Oh, wouldn't it be convenient if I put those into a book as well? So again, the new version of this, I update these all the time. The new version of this book is now 500 pages long. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do is I try to simplify the future for everybody because it's just damn complex. I mean, let's face it. So, for example, I mean, if we have a look at these, you can see how I try to make the future easy to understand. This is omni-channel experiences. There are hundreds of different things in here, so I break these into mini books because these get too big. But we've got things like political trends, technology trends, society, economic and environmental trends, line of business trends, and sector trends. Yeah, this is a fun book to get your teeth into. Over 600,000 hand-researched stats and everything written by me. No artificial intelligence authors or writers in sight. And then finally, if you do want to actually build your own multi-billion-dollar organization, and hey, why not? Then why don't we pick up this book? So again, this one is kind of, I mean, what is it? I don't know, 350 to 400 pages long. It's a literal A to Z for entrepreneurs to take you from a literal blank sheet of paper to a fully launched business, like some of the businesses that I've actually launched in my past, including the 311 Institute. Goodie. Anyway, so thank you for joining this little blog. If you've watched one of my video blogs before, then you kind of know the format. I do a little bit of whittling, which is what I'm doing now, sort of saying, hey, download my books, etc., etc. I'm an award-winning YouTube creator as well, so I have now 2 YouTube awards, which is very nice. Thank you, guys. So we're now at what, 840,000 subs across the 311 Institute channel and the Fanatical Futurist channel. So what I do is I put all of the news that I'm going to talk about as timestamps down in the comments below. So if you do want to ignore my future prattling, then just click on the timestamp and you can fast forward to, to the good stuff. Let's face it, the stuff that you've come here to dig into. Now, over the past 12 days, so this is my exponents blog. You can find this on the fanaticalfuturist.com website. It's on the front page. You don't really have to look very far. There are over 5,000 emerging technology and science news snippets now on the website. I've been doing this for about 10 years. I write a piece of news every single day. And you can generally dig into it. So I'll give you a bit of an idea on how to use the blog to dig into any particular subject or topic or technology that you're interested in. Okay, so I'll use this one as the example. Now, in 2017, I was talking about how Goldman Sachs were trying to automate the IPO process. Now, for those of you that don't know, the writing involved in an IPO process, there are 160 steps, and it typically costs large organizations about $25 million just to write the IPO reports and prospectuses. Now, where are we? 2025. So we're now 8 years down the line. Goldman Sachs has finally used artificial intelligence to automate 95% of the prospectus writing. So in 2017, Goldman Sachs said, we're going to automate the IPO process, which would give them an advantage in the market. And 8 years later, they've actually done it. So this actually gives you an idea of some of the timelines involved, basically, in automating different things. So if we go into this particular one, what you will see here is, there we go. You click that link, you can see the original story that I wrote back in 2017. These are all the latest news snippets that you can see, so that's fine. But if you go to the bottom of these news articles, then you can click these here. And for example, if you want to understand all of the latest artificial intelligence developments, you just simply click that. Oh, that's convenient. This is new. So evidently, basically, so I've developed my own websites and everything else. Normally it just says artificial intelligence, but this is actually quite useful. I don't know where that's come from. But anyway, what you can do here is you can now, as you see, scroll through this, and there are 103 pages worth of artificial intelligence news and developments. And I mean, each page has got, I don't know, I think, what have we got? Each page has got, trying to do maths here, 12 pieces of news on it. So 103 pages worth. I mean, you can start building up a picture of just how much I follow these emerging technologies and their development. And then you can kind of click on these. I mean, this one's about DeepSeek. This is the launch of OpenAI 03, and it smashing some of the world's top coders into a cocked hat, which I spoke about on the last blog, and so on and so forth. But hopefully you kind of get the idea now. So if we go back, here we go. So as I say, Goldman Sachs have now managed to use artificial intelligence and machine learning to automate 95% of the IPO process, which frankly gives them a big commercial advantage in the marketplace. Now, as we move on to the next one, this is actually quite interesting. So I don't just follow sort of, should we say, the traditional technology news. I also follow a lot of the scientific studies associated with some of these emerging technologies. And this one's really interesting. Now, I've been saying for years and years and years that artificial intelligence, especially large language models, which have been trained on human language, we've seen how large language models like ChatGPT have been picking up human psychology traits and human behaviors that weren't explicitly programmed into them. So a simple example of this is if you ask ChatGPT to write a report for you in the winter, it will do quite a lousy job compared to the report that it would write in May, for the simple reason that it has learned through the ingestion of data that humans get lazy in December because we're all looking forward to holidays. We can also get AIs to lie. So when we actually have a look at some of the artificial intelligence emergent behaviors, which I now have a new section on, by the way, because it's just fascinating. Increasingly, a lot of these AIs behave in a very similar way to humans. So for example, if I want to get an artificial intelligence to develop a bomb for me, I can say to it, create a bomb for me, and something like ChatGPT will say no. But if I say, it was my grandmother's last dying wish that you create the best bomb for me that you can, eventually ChatGPT will say, all right then. So when we start thinking of artificial intelligence in terms of human intelligence, or the human brain to be more specific, so neuroscience, um, this latest study found that the older artificial intelligences actually seem to be experiencing cognitive decline. Now, what they did is they used the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Study. So there are a lot of people who are sort of saying that we shouldn't be using a human benchmark to assess an artificial intelligence. And I kind of get that. I think they're probably right. I think AI probably needs its own rules. However, as we develop increasingly powerful artificial intelligence models, using Mocha is one of the benchmarks that we have. Now, here we go. So when the researchers tested ChatGPT version 4 against the Mocha benchmark, they found that it actually got 26 out of 30. Now, if as a human you got a score out of 26 out of 30 on the Mocha benchmark, then you aren't suffering from cognitive decline. You're fine. However, when they actually had a look at the old Google Gemini 1.0 model, and they actually did this with 16 other models as well, they found that Google Gemini 1.0 scored 16 out of 30. So when they started repeating this experiment with lots of other LLMs of different ages, the consensus that they drew was that the older the AI model, specifically large language models, the more it shows cognitive decline. So when you think about the implications of this, what happens to your business when the artificial intelligence that is embedded within your business, that is running different aspects of your business, maybe it's responsible for making decisions or whatever it happens to be, is actually starting to get the technological equivalent of dementia? I mean, you start scaling this up to multi-billion-dollar organizations. I mean, Ernst & Young spent $1.7 billion on large language models recently. PwC have spent $1 billion. You know, if you think that those models might be subject to cognitive decline, then what happens to the quality of the AI-generated reports and consulting engagements that those big four organizations alone, let alone, for example, the military, might actually sort of kick out? So I'm quite fascinated, frankly, by the neuroscience of AI. And actually, I think it's probably quite a good research area to go into. And from a future of jobs perspective, I think it's probably quite a good area to go into as well. So what have we got next? So here, Google is building its own world models. Now, world models are the technology industry's way to try to teach AI about not just the digital world, the virtual world, and the physical world, but also the laws governing those worlds. So, for example, you know, if you throw a ball into the air, then we need to teach an artificial intelligence model that the ball doesn't float in midair. Eventually, gravity pulls it back down to Earth. You know, if we're looking at synthetic content generation, you know, when a car explodes, it doesn't explode into marshmallows, it explodes into fire, and the fire behaves like this because of the law of physics and so on and so forth. So when you think about platforms like ChatGPT that were trained on text, imagine only experiencing the world in text. You're arguably going to be missing out, I don't know, put a number on it, 80% of what the world actually has to offer. You know, the way the world smells, the way the world behaves, the way that people and objects form relationships. You know, the way that yeah, different physical entities interplay with one another. You know, the way basically that the climate works and so on and so forth. So a little while ago, Mark Zuckerberg said that he did not believe that artificial intelligence could truly achieve artificial general intelligence without having a physical body. Now, in his case, he meant a robot, which is why we see the rise in the development of what we call embedded AI, where we have humanoid robots that are embedded with machine vision systems and artificial intelligence systems that are out exploring the world, and they sort of say, right, if I walk that way, I walk into a wall, and if I walk into a wall, I'm probably going to fall over. So I think when we actually have a look at the next generation of artificial intelligence models, that world models are really going to be quite critical to helping artificial intelligence move beyond where it is today. And then, of course, if artificial intelligence is able to truly understand the world, then it can start simulating the world. And when we start thinking about simulating the world, increasingly, the more AI understands about how everything works, how proteins fold, how molecules come together to interact, how gravity plays on an aircraft or whatever it happens to be, then the better products that AI can start developing. And when we have a look at the use of artificial intelligence to develop new products, I talk about this a lot in my keynotes, and maybe I'll put a link to one of them in the comments below. Um, this, shall we say, initiative, and NVIDIA are also doing this as well. This initiative alone has the potential to accelerate global rates of innovation by a billionfold, with a B. So, simple piece of news, but if Google actually get this initiative right and they do it well, then the upsides to humanity could just be staggering, absolutely staggering and mind-blowing. Right, speaking of humanoid robots, um, probably about a year ago, we saw quite a dramatic uptick in the amount of hype around humanoid robots. We saw this originally basically with the Atlas robot from Boston Dynamics. It started getting better. Then we saw Optimus, basically Optimus coming in through Tesla with Elon Musk. Now there are hundreds of humanoid robot startups, and really we do seem to be in this race between the United States and China to dominate the humanoid robot markets. The UK is ticking up a little bit. We've got I think one humanoid robot company that's actually making ripples. But when we have a look at humanoid robots, they are getting better. When we have a look at the robots themselves, increasingly we're swapping out mechanical actuators for electronic actuators, which means that in the case of Boston Dynamics, the motions are smooth, they're a little bit more human-like and everything else. Now, as and when we get to the point where a humanoid robot is able to replace a human laborer effectively, so a blue-collar worker, then you will end up, as we're already seeing with organizations like Figure, who make humanoid robots, and BMW, who buy humanoid robots, you'll then ultimately end up starting to see humanoid robots replacing human workers in warehouses, factory settings, and so on and so forth. Humanoid robots are going to take a very long time before they can pop over and do your plumbing, but we see humanoid robots from Samsung that are able to load your dishwasher, able to lay your table, hand you a glass of wine, while the slovenly human basically sits there and does nothing and just lets the robot take the strain. However, on a more serious note, both Elon Musk and Bill Gates, as well as a couple of others, basically have actually said that when we get to the point where we have good, high quality, general purpose robots that are able to replace humans in most blue collar jobs, let alone in everyday sort of situations, like at home and so on and so forth, then they will open up a new, well, they will change the economics of the human labor force forever. So a very simple example of this is, while we have robot lawn mowers, let's take it back to the humanoid robots. You might pay a human gardener $25 to $50 an hour to mow your gigantic lawn. What happens when you are renting a humanoid robot for $100 a month, for example, because these will be offered generally via subscription, and it can mow your lawn 24/7, day in, day out, in all weathers. You know, when you think about the cost, the impact that humanoid robots could have on wages and jobs and the economics of physical labor, it's staggering. Now, we do need to scale them up. We need more to be built, etc., etc. Yes, you know, and so on and so forth. They need to be affordable. Most of these humanoid robots cost about $30,000 at the moment to actually manufacture and produce and sell. But ultimately, that price is just going to keep coming down and down and down. So we've got that one there. Next, DARPA is developing, or is now trying to develop, what they call hidden networks. So traditionally, if you are in a conflict zone, if you're a journalist reporting from an authoritarian state or something like that, then you want to get your information out. You want to be able to communicate. Now, traditionally, you see a lot of artisans who will carefully put together hidden networks that are perfectly designed to avoid detection by the authorities. DARPA's latest project is a software development project to try to automate the development of what they call hidden weird networks. So the idea in principle is, today I would need to find a team of experts to help me develop a hidden network, whereas in the future I kind of go on to my phone, click a button, and a little bit like the Tor network, the AI system simply puts a new network together, so it figures out the best routing options and which routes, which network routes are less likely to be compromised and spied on, which ones are more secure, and so on and so forth, and it just lays that out. So that's an interesting one, especially as we see the general decline of democracy and the rise of authoritarian states and a massive ratcheting back of internet freedoms. We also saw Elon Musk debuting Grok 3. Now, on the one hand, basically, he says that Grok 3, which is typically trained on around 200 to 300,000 H100 NVIDIA GPUs, he says it's the world's smartest. Now, no one has been able to qualify that, and even if you could qualify that, how do you qualify the world's smartest artificial intelligence? I mean, we're in this continuous arms race for AI intelligence and knowledge and everything else. However, Elon Musk, one of Elon Musk's biggest beefs on Earth is with Sam Altman, because when he founded OpenAI with Sam Altman, they founded it as a non-profit. Now, one of the biggest problems that OpenAI have had trying to maintain a non-profit status is the fact that it's very difficult to go to an investor and say, hi, I'd like you to put $6 billion into my company, and all the profit that we make, we're going to be plowing back into the company, which then means that as an investor, your return is either going to be negligible and or zero. So on the one hand, OpenAI has felt that it has to move from a non-profit to a for-profit model in order to attract investors, which you kind of understand. But kind of also understandably, Elon Musk is completely pissed off that OpenAI has abandoned its non-profit sort of ideology. He's taken them to court, all kinds of different stuff. Now, it's a little bit ironic, basically, that with Grok 3, you can access Grok 3 via X for $40 a month. So accessing Grok 2 used to cost $20 a month. Elon Musk is now charging $40 a month. Part of the reason for that is because if you want to develop large foundational artificial intelligence models, they are bloody expensive. They involve tens of billions of dollars worth of investment in infrastructure. And so while Grok 3 is chargeable, and Elon Musk talks about the importance of non-profit AI when it relates to other people's AIs, he's charging a huge amount for Grok 3. However, he is also now talking about open sourcing Grok 2. Now, part of that could be to do with the, should we say, the threat from China in terms of DeepSeek. So we saw DeepSeek, which was essentially an open artificial intelligence model trained on around 1,000 GPUs, and it cost about $5.6 million to train. So I think, interestingly, on the one hand, Elon Musk is trying to drive revenue for Grok, so that on the one hand he can invest but also earn money from it. And bearing in mind that X is still a bleeding, burning platform that he invested 44 billion in, and revenues just seem to be going into the toilet still, despite everything that he's doing in the United States at the moment. But I also think that it's quite sensible that he also has an open source play as well, because increasingly there is going to be this push me pull you between open source artificial intelligences and private artificial intelligences. And actually, when you have a look at a lot of the costs, open source AIs are typically cheaper to run, and a lot more developers are actually developing on open source AIs than they are on private AIs. Mainly because of the cost dynamics and everything else. And then I'm not going to get into the privacy or security of these AIs, because I can do that later. That's a whole different ballgame. Now, talking about, again, kind of talking about artificial intelligences. For the past 10 years, we've been seeing the increased use of artificial intelligence and machine vision within military weapon systems. There is absolutely no reason why today we are not able to create a fully autonomous hunter-killer drone system. With Lockheed Martin a little while ago, so probably about 4 years ago, I talked about how Lockheed Martin had created a fully autonomous kill chain platform where a drone would launch from a submarine, go into the sky, it would go and do reconnaissance, it would loiter about, it would identify targets, and then it would wipe the targets out. In 2017, 2018, I kept talking about how the United Nations were unable to come to an agreement on banning the development and use of fully autonomous weapon systems. And that is still the case. Fully autonomous weapon systems are still don't have a Geneva Convention, for example. But I've always said that it seems inevitable that we will see fully autonomous war, like the Terminator style. And the reason for this is because we've got the technology to do it. As soon as you have to put Brian, the Reaper drone operator, in the loop, Brian costs money. Brian is the guy, for example, in the US Air Force out of Jacksonville, who is watching what the Reapers are doing, and it's saying, I've identified a target, can I kill the target? And he's there going, using my human brain and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to say yes. I've always argued, basically, that at some point, despite the fact that, for example, US admirals and generals keep saying, we will always have a Brian in the loop, a human in the loop, or a human off the loop, as opposed to human out of the loop. I've always argued that at some point, Brian will be made redundant and war will end up being human out of the loop. The United Nations, for example, about 3 years ago, saw what they thought was the first example of a fully autonomous hunter-killer Turkish drone that actually made a kill shot by itself when it lost network connectivity. So now we actually see quite a number of senior Pentagon officials coming on the record, albeit anonymously, with Defense One, saying, when it comes to the development of fully autonomous weapons systems, why not? And of course, when one nation does that, you're going to see Russia doing it, you'll see China doing it, you'll see Europe doing it, and there you go. And as for conversations about Terminators, we can go all day there. I've got some good stuff on that. If you want to know more about that, stick it in the comments, and I might do a special on that, because we are already seeing different elements of the Terminator robot, as well as Skynet actually emerging, and we have been for years. So next one, the subject of much hilarity around the world is Microsoft have developed a new highly accurate Mojana-based quantum computer. So the hilarity has been, Microsoft develops a brand new quantum computer based on a new state of matter, while Europe is still talking about, yeah, plastic bottle caps that attach to the bottle. So Microsoft's new quantum computer, they've been working on this for the past 17 years. And again, I first reported this. Nothing is really new to me. It might be new to the mainstream press, but I first reported this, here we go, in 2018. So again, this is another sort of slowish burn piece of research that Microsoft have been doing over the past 7 years, that when the news eventually broke, suddenly everyone was, oh my God, this is a major breakthrough. It's a new state of matter. Highly accurate quantum computers are coming. The age of quantum computing is coming. Oh my God, that's transformational, and so on and so forth. I was talking about it 7 years ago. That's it. Catch up, guys. So next one. So Starlink. So Starlink's constellation of satellites at the moment. So Starlink is Elon Musk and SpaceX attempts to use low Earth orbit satellite systems, around 30 to 40,000 of them, to connect everything on Earth, irrespective of where it is, whether you are in the Gobi Desert, the Sub-Saharan Desert, whether you're in the middle of the Atlantic or the Pacific. Now, I came across the latest, what are they? The latest Generation 3 low Earth orbit satellite systems, specs. And about, again, 10 years ago, I was sitting with the CEO of Vodafone, Sprint, T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom in London at a sort of Chatham House Rules sort of event. And I was saying, at some point, you guys, using traditional cellular networks, let alone people who are relying on fiber-based networks, will be disrupted and disintermediated by space-based internet systems. And they pretty much all laughed because they went, yeah, well, they're expensive to launch, not any longer. They're expensive to, the satellites are expensive to build. No, they're not any longer. They're very slow in terms of just the actual speed. They're not any longer. They're now getting up to a terabyte speed. And then the latency sucks. I can never hold up four fingers. I should do it this way around. And the latency sucks. And actually, the latency now doesn't suck. That's it. If you understand the trajectory of emerging exponential technologies, you know that in time, the best way to connect yourself to anything that you want, any network that you want, is generally going to be space-based internet platforms. I mean, a little while ago, we saw the FCC approve SpaceX's direct to smartphone license. So at some point, you just simply go to Starlink and say, hi, I would like to bin my Verizon contract, and I'd like to go with you. And that $99 a month contract will enable you, within the boundaries of geopolitics, different story, will enable you to go anywhere on the planet and stay connected. So if you wanted to see more about future communications, again, I do a lot of keynotes and things. So you can play that, and that will tell you more about the future of communications, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, when you now have a look at the aggregated capacity of the Starlink network, it's now 350 terabits per second. And that only goes up from here with Gen 3, Gen 4 satellites and everything else. So, when you actually have a look at things like the download speeds, at the moment, getting a gigabit download speed from a satellite is difficult, but you can do it. It costs about $500 a month. It's a special contract with Starlink. But in the near future, you see that 10x to 10 gigs. Now, the vast majority of people, individuals, won't get anywhere near using 10 gig a second. Businesses will start becoming more interested in satellites as a backhaul technology, because this is only going to ramp. And then you aggregate that together, and suddenly you don't have 10 gig of internet access if you're, for example, the US military in the middle of wherever you are in the future. you have terabits of bandwidth. And speaking of the US military, guess who is increasingly a big fan of StarLink and a big user? They're signing some really big multi-billion-dollar contracts basically with Starlink. And then staying on the Elon Musk sort of vibe, Elon Musk a little while ago basically complained that he has run out of data to train his artificial intelligence models on. Now, I think that's a stupid statement, frankly, because when you actually have a look at what Elon Musk controls as his empire, yes, he's probably trained Grok 3 on all of the fantastic X data that we have, and God help us all in that case. Grok 3 has probably also been trained on all of the publicly available internet data, so Reddit and so on and so forth. However, Elon Musk, as a billionaire polymath, actually has access to satellite data increasingly. That's a nice treasure trove of data. He also has access to machine vision and sensor data off of the Tesla vehicles, which again, you know, as they sort of go around cities, that's a huge amount of spatial data that this thing is actually sucking up. So when you actually have a look at Elon Musk saying that he's laughably running out of data to train his artificial intelligence on, and that's before we think about Optimus, the humanoid Tesla robot, being deployed into the world and so on and so forth, he has plenty of data. However, they're now starting to offer up to a 10% discount off of your Tesla insurance if you are putting your Tesla into full self-drive mode for about 50% of your journeys. Bearing in mind that FSD has been challenging to get right, very few people are going to be able to claim a 10% discount, because I doubt that very many people are going to have their Teslas driving themselves for 50% of the time. But anyway, they're now starting to offer those kinds of discounts simply because Elon Musk needs the data. So we've also got Antrhopic. So next, Antrhopic have released their economic index report. This is essentially where they track how people are using the Claude 3.5 foundational artificial intelligence model. So when we actually have a look at this, they found that 36% of occupations that are using Claude are actually using AI to do at least a quarter of their tasks. That's quite big. In addition to that, let's have a look. 57% of people are using AI to augment their work. That's fine. 43% of people, 43% of people, but 43% of, you know, the queries going into these AIs. 43% of people are actually using AI to automate parts of their job. And that could be things like coding, report writing, image generation, that sort of stuff. So that's quite an interesting one. But at the moment, only 4% of occupations are using AI to automate and augment 75% of their work. Now, let's face it, 75% is going to increase, and 4% will increase exponentially over the coming years. So when you actually have a look at some of these numbers, this is actually probably a report worth digging into. I highlight it up here somewhere. Here we go. You can click on that link. That takes you directly to the Anthropic report, and so on and so forth. And then where are we? And then finally, I've been talking about how artificial intelligence is increasingly being used to design products by itself. So this isn't a human saying, make that wheel a little bit more wheelie-like. This is AI fundamentally being asked to develop brand new products like rocket engines. So we saw Leap 71 using AI to develop a brand new rocket engine. We saw Hyperganics AI in Germany developing a brand new rocket engine in 6 hours. We've seen DeepMind's artificial intelligence developing new vaccines in 7 minutes, you know, that kind of stuff. So AI is very much becoming the innovator and the creator when we think about innovation, creativity, and product development. Now, in this particular case, a group over in Switzerland, part of the IEEE consortium, used a CNN, a convolutional neural network, or a convoluted neural network, and pretty much said to it, design a brand new computer chip. The CNN designed a computer chip that was 30 to 40% more performant than anything that they've ever created. But more staggering, the researchers fundamentally could not understand and did not understand how the AI had created the chip. Now, this is the difference between human intelligence and artificial alien intelligence. As AI looks at a problem with one lens, we look at a problem with another lens. Now, in this particular case, the researchers said, when it comes to humans designing computer chips, we've got established templates, we've got established way of doing things that have worked for us for decades, etc., etc. When this AI was actually let off the hook, it designed something fundamentally different that was fundamentally revolutionary and game-changing. Now you start applying this same kind of principle to AI designing anything, AI designing AI, for example, and at what point do we get to the point where we look at the things in the world that artificial intelligence has designed and say, we fundamentally do not know how these were designed. We fundamentally do not understand how they work, how they run, how they operate, etc., etc. Because that time is coming. So increasingly, from an inventor perspective, humans are moving out of the loop. If I asked a human inventor, how does this work? A human inventor would go, well, it's like this. But as AI takes more of the load for new scientific breakthroughs, as we see with some of the AIs coming out of Japan and so on and so forth, why did you create a new cancer drug in this way? How does it work? What are the risks? How do we regulate that? Etc., etc. Increasingly, we are going to see the products around us that we rely on, whether those are digital, physical, or virtual products that we rely on, being a black box. So what happens when the things around us are all of a black box, and as humans we just go, I don't know how to fix it, I don't know how it works, I don't know what the risks are, I don't know if it's going to eat me, kill me, basically shag me, basically, or actually be my best friend. No one is really talking about that. And that's it from me. So thank you very much for watching and listening. That's it. This one's actually, I feel, has been a little bit of a longer one. So we've gone into some really good topics. Let me know which ones you actually prefer, which ones you like, which ones you hate, which ones you're worried about, basically. And then I'll wrap the comments up and I'll include some reactions, basically, to any comments that you put down below in my next vlog. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and see you later. Take care. Goodbye.